You still living in that little duplex, huh? That's what my cousin Melissa said right in front of everybody while sipping some overpriced red wine she probably couldn't pronounce. It was last Thanksgiving. You know, one of those forced family dinners where everyone's pretending to like each other just long enough to get through dessert. I smiled. Didn't say a word, just kept cutting into my damn turkey. What she didn't know was that the duplex she was mocking, I owned the whole damn block. Let me back up. My name's Jordan Hale. I'm 37 now, based out of Portland, Oregon, and for the better part of my adult life, my family has treated me like the poor cousin, the underachiever, the one who means well, but clearly hasn't figured life out yet. It didn't matter that I always showed up, always offered help. I wasn't flashy, so I didn't count. They couldn't see past the fact that I drove a 2008 Honda Civic and wore the same coat every winter. They didn't know that coat came off whenever I stepped into boardrooms where I owned more equity than any of them combined. But you don't get here without eating a whole buffet of disrespect first. A few years ago, I was broke. I mean, ramen 3 times a day broke. My credit was trash from co-signing a car loan for my dad's spoiler he never paid. I was working 2 jobs leasing agent during the day, Lyft driver at night trying to get my feet under me after a brutal layoff. Meanwhile, Melissa was on Instagram flying to Cabo every other week, and my Uncle Rick was posting yacht pics with captions like, "Legacy is built, not given, screw that." They didn't see the months I spent learning about property tax codes at 2 a.m., or how I took a chance on a beat-up fourplex in Southeast Portland using scraped-together cash and a loan with an interest rate that felt like robbery. But I learned, I messed up. I fixed it. I painted walls, rewired kitchens, talked to every tenant like they mattered. And slowly, I started flipping it. 3 years ago, that fourplex turned into 12 units, then 26. I set up an LLC under a different name, Copperline Equity Partners, so nobody connected it to me. Not out of shame, but because I didn't want the noise. I wanted peace. I reinvested everything. No vacations, no Rolex, no Tesla. Just bricks, leases, tenant retention reports, and compound interest. It's funny how people stop asking how you are once they think you're beneath them. And that's fine. Let them sleep. Fast forward to last year, I heard Dane Tower, the Dane Tower. The building my grandfather built downtown was bleeding cash. Leaks, renters leaving, books looking shady as hell. And guess who was on the board, running it into the ground? Yup, Melissa, Uncle Rick, and Aunt Elaine. They were so busy siphoning money into side hustles and fake charities, they didn't see the slow implosion happening. But I did. So I made a move. Through a different holding company, I started buying shares, quietly, patiently. I acquired just under 80% without them knowing. All legal, all clean. I was the new owner of the family monument. But here's the real kicker. The very night they clowned me at that Thanksgiving table, making jokes about affordable housing like it was a disease. They were sitting in a room inside a property I now had full legal control over. I wanted to laugh so bad, but I didn't. I just smiled, passed the cranberry sauce, and made a mental note. Let them finish their pie. Tomorrow, I'll serve the real dessert. Because the next day, every single one of them would get an email, a meeting invite, from Copperline Equity, regarding a full financial audit and transition of ownership for Dane Tower. Subject line, new direction, new standards. Later that night, I sat in my small apartment, the one with creaky floors and that old brick charm no one but me seemed to love, and cracked open a beer. I thought about how long it took to get here, how much asterisk I ate over the years just to make it. Then my phone buzzed. Text from my mom. Melissa said you were real quiet at dinner. You okay? I stared at it for a while. I typed, "Yeah, just tired of pretending." Didn't hit send. Instead, I opened my laptop, finalized the transition documents, and stared at the clause that would legally remove every single family member from the board due to negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. I felt nothing. No guilt, no revenge high, just stillness. It was time. The next morning hit different. I woke up before the sun, not out of excitement, but because my body was wired for war. You don't gear up to face a room full of people who've dismissed you for decades and feel calm about it. My inbox was already buzzing. Meeting reminders, notifications from the lawyer. The packet was ready: contracts, board removal notices, financial audits, all clean, all above board. I stared at it for a moment like it was a loaded weapon. In some ways, it was. At 10:00 a.m., every board member of Dane Tower, aka my lovely family, got the same email. Subject line: Copperline Equity Board Realignment Urgent. Within 3 minutes, my phone blew up. Melissa called twice. Uncle Rick left a voicemail that sounded like he stubbed his ego mid-sentence. Aunt Elaine sent one of those passive-aggressive emails. We are surprised and a little concerned. Let's talk this through civilly. Civilly. These are the same people who used to call me Crash and Burn Jordan at Christmas because I didn't finish college in 4 years. But sure, let's talk. By noon, they were all seated in the old Dane conference room. Long mahogany table, heavy curtains, dusty portraits of ancestors who probably rolled in their graves watching this family turn their legacy into a scam. They didn't know I was already there, watching from the side room, sipping my coffee, letting them stew. I heard it's foreign money, Melissa whispered. Some VC shark, Uncle Rick added, smug. Maybe that firm from Miami, Elaine guessed, sipping her latte like the whole building wasn't about to implode under her. When I finally walked in, it took a full 5 seconds before anyone recognized me. I wasn't in a hoodie this time, just a plain black suit. Nothing flashy, but clean, confident. Melissa blinked. Jordan, hey, I said, tossing the audit folders onto the table. Have a seat. We're going to clear a few things up. You could hear a pin drop. Then Uncle Rick scoffed. What is this, you work for them? No, I said, I am them. Melissa laughed. Wait, like, you own Copperline? Correct. 78% of this building is mine. So technically, you're all trespassing. Aunt Elaine choked on her latte. The silence that followed was unreal. Then the yelling started. You can't just take over a family asset. You have no right. You barely finished college. What gives you the authority to make decisions like this? I let them rant. Let them sputter. Then I opened the first file and slid it across the table to Rick. Page 4, I said. See that maintenance line item? The one that mysteriously disappeared? Yeah, that's because you rerouted those funds to cover your personal loan. He turned pale. I looked at Elaine. Page 11. That fake vendor contract, the one where you build the building twice, 4 community enrichment events. Yeah, we interviewed all 23 tenants. None of them ever heard of such an event. Then Melissa, page 17. Remember when you said you ran a beautification campaign for the lobby? We pulled the invoices. You charged $5,000 for scented candles and a rug that came from Target's clearance section. Melissa's jaw tightened. You set us up. No, I said, calmly. You did this yourselves. I just made sure someone actually gave a damn. They all looked at each other, trying to calculate their next move. You can't do this, Rick muttered. I leaned in. You already signed over the rights when you diluted ownership 5 years ago during that refinancing stunt. You didn't read the fine print. I was trying to save the building. He snapped. No, I said. You were trying to save your image. You let this place rot. Melissa stood up. So what now, you gonna throw us out? Not yet. I said, first, we restructure. You're all off the board, effective immediately. We're hiring external auditors and new tenant liaisons. And we're turning 30% of the units into low-income housing with locked-in rent for the next 10 years. Elaine looked horrified. That'll kill the property value. No, I replied. It'll kill the greed. After the meeting, I sat in the empty boardroom, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows. I wasn't even happy. I thought I'd feel victorious, but instead, I felt tired, hollow, even like I'd just cut off a toxic limb and was still reeling from the shock. But there was one more piece left. Later that evening, I walked to the building's courtyard. Some of the tenants were outside, old women watering plants, kids chasing each other with popsicles. One of the moms looked up and smiled at me. "You new here?" "Sort of," I said, "just visiting." She nodded. "Well, welcome. We don't see many new folks who stop to say hi." I walked over to the garden, the one I'd personally approved funding for a year ago. It wasn't much, just a patch of soil and some wooden benches, but it was the first real thing this place had seen in years. And in that moment, surrounded by people who didn't know my name but felt safer because of what I did, that felt like something. Then I got a text from my mom. "Your uncle's upset. Says you blindsided the family." I stared at it for a long time. Was it blindside or just overdue? I typed out a response. "They've been driving blind for years. I just gave them the mirror." Didn't hit send. Instead, I turned my phone off and walked home. Back at the apartment, I stood by the window, looking out at the skyline. The same buildings I once thought I'd never be a part of. I'd never worn a Rolex, still drove the Civic, still lived in the same old place. But you know what? I owned the view now. And that was enough for tonight. It didn't take long before the family started spinning their own version of the story. By the next morning, Rick had already updated his LinkedIn bio to say, "Former strategic advisor at Didnt Tower, transitioned for personal growth." Please, this man got removed like moldy drywall. Melissa took it further. She posted on Facebook one of those long, overly dramatic posts with fake humility about how sometimes family doesn't see eye to eye, and how she wished the best for everyone involved. Except, someone in her friends list must have forwarded it to me because she also added a private note under the post. "Can't believe Jordan would do this to us. Honestly, he's always been jealous." Jealous. I don't even wear watches. Melissa, you flexed a $900 purse and I bought a duplex. But yeah, go off. The post got a ton of pity comments. "Stay strong. Girl family betrayal is the worst. Cut out the toxicity." I didn't respond. Not publicly, not yet. But it did piss me off. Not because she lied, but because she always played the victim. Her and Rick both. Every time they got caught, it was suddenly someone else's fault. This time, though, I had receipts. That afternoon, I got a call from a local news blog. Apparently, someone had leaked the audit docs. Not the full report, but enough to show discrepancies in tenant maintenance funds, luxury spending, and shady vendor contracts. They wanted a comment. I didn't plan on going public, but now that the gloves were off, I emailed them a press release I'd been sitting on for weeks, just in case. Title: New majority owner of Didnt Tower announces transparency reforms, affordable housing plans. Within an hour, it was live. And suddenly, I wasn't just the quiet cousin. I was the guy who exposed a multi-million-dollar mismanagement scheme and saved a historical building. And the fallout? Oh, it was delicious. Rick tried to go on a podcast to set the record straight, but all he did was dig his hole deeper. The host straight up asked him, "So why did you authorize personal expense reimbursements from tenant funds?" He stuttered for 30 seconds, then blamed a disgruntled intern. Aunt Elaine went silent. She's always been the calculated one, smile in your face, knife in your back. Her nonprofit board temporarily suspended her duties a few days later. Public statement pending investigation. Melissa, though, she doubled down. Started tweeting cryptic quotes like, "Sometimes family is just a lesson in disguise." Girl, you were the lesson. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, let them burn themselves out while I focused on fixing the mess they left behind. We brought in new management, repaired the roof, reopened the broken laundry room, Even got Wi-Fi routers installed on every floor. Nothing flashy, just dignity stuff. Basic things people had been begging for. But the old board ignored because it didn't make them look rich. The tenants noticed. They left notes on my door. "Thank you for caring. Feels like someone finally sees us. God bless you." I didn't know how to process that. For years, I'd been treated like I was invisible. And now, the same silence that used to feel cold felt kind of peaceful. Then came the day I saw my mom at the grocery store. She looked tired, makeup half done. You could tell she hadn't slept right. I almost walked past her not because I was mad, just I didn't want the confrontation. But she spotted me. "Jordan." I turned. "Hey," she hesitated. "You haven't answered my texts." "I know. You doing okay?" "Yeah." Long pause. She fiddled with the box of cereal in her hands. "Your uncle said you embarrassed the family." I raised an eyebrow. "Did I?" "I don't know. Maybe there was a better way to handle it." I smiled. Not a warm smile. More like the smile you give someone who just doesn't get it. There were years they could have handled it better. "Mom, I just happened to be the first one to do it with receipts." She didn't respond. Later that night, I was scrolling through old photos. One popped up from like 10 years ago. A family dinner, everyone dressed up, me in the back, half cut out of the frame, literally. I remember that night. I'd just lost my job and showed up anyway, because I thought being around family would help. Instead, Rick made a toast about winners find a way, and Melissa joked about not everyone being built for big things. And I just sat there, smiled, ate my mashed potatoes. But looking at that photo now, I didn't feel small. I felt proud, because that same kid in the corner grew up, built an empire, and flipped the table all without raising his voice. A week later, I got a handwritten letter from one of the elderly tenants at Dane Tower. It said, "I've lived here 26 years. Thought I'd die in this place before anyone gave a damn. But you changed that. Thank you for seeing us." I read it 3 times. And yeah, I cried, because that's legacy. Not marble countertops or rooftop pools. Just being the reason someone feels safe for the first time in years. Meanwhile, Melissa's agency lost 2 major clients. Apparently, her little backdoor branding deals didn't sit well with ethics boards once her name hit the news. Rick quietly sold one of his cars and took down all his thought leadership videos. Guess the audience dried up. Elaine still radio silent. But me, I was just getting started. Because once the smoke cleared, something else became obvious. This wasn't just revenge. This was a F*** King reset. A couple weeks after the press story dropped, I started getting attention I didn't ask for. At first, it was local Portland Business Journal wanted a quote. Then it got weird. Someone from a national real estate blog DM'd me on LinkedIn like, "We'd love to feature your ethical housing model. Are you available for a Zoom interview this week?" I didn't respond. Not because I didn't appreciate it, I did, but all of it still felt unreal, like I'd been invisible for so long. I didn't know how to sit under a spotlight without flinching. I wasn't trying to be a damn icon. I just wanted a building that didn't feel like a scam. Then came the part I didn't expect. One night, I'm heading out of the building, just finished meeting with our new maintenance guy about repaving the back walkway, and I see someone leaning against a rental scooter out front. Black bomber jacket, half smirk, chewing gum like she owned the sidewalk. Leah, I blinked. She grinned. Well, look who finally got some shine. My ex, from 5 years ago. We hadn't spoken since the day she told me I was too safe and lacked ambition. Her exact words, "I didn't hate her. Honestly, I got it. Back then I was working 60 hours a week to keep one property afloat and barely had time to breathe, let alone make dinner or dream big out loud." But seeing her now, after everything, it twisted something in my chest. We sat at a cafe nearby. She acted casual, but her questions were sharp. So you really own Dane Tower now? Yeah, and you bought out your own family without them knowing. Pretty much. She laughed. Damn, you got teeth after all. I sipped my coffee. Always had 'em. Just didn't bite unless I had to. She gave me this look, part impressed, part curious, like she was recalibrating who I was. Then she dropped the line. I've been consulting for Melissa the past year. I nearly choked. You what? Brand rehab, crisis management. I'm supposed to help her pivot into philanthropy, or some bullsh asterisk to... I stared at her, and you're telling me this now because... She shrugged. Figured full transparency was better than you finding out online. Don't WTF is this? I sat with that for a while. She'd been working with the same cousin who mocked me for a decade and helped run Dane Tower into the ground. Why even reach out? I asked, honestly pissed. Leah tapped her nails against her glass. Because I saw the press release, and the interviews, and the tenant letters, and I realized, damn, I underestimated you. Too little. Way too late. You know what ambition looks like now, I said, voice low. It looks like showing up every day even when no one claps for you. She looked away. That building, I continued, was full of people scared of rent hikes and ignored maintenance calls. I fixed that, quietly, while everyone else was chasing aesthetics. I know, she whispered. I ** kicked up. We didn't talk much after that. I paid the bill and walked her to her scooter. Before she left, she turned back. If you ever want to build something together, something real, I'm here. I didn't respond. Or some doors stay shut, and that's okay. A few days later, I got a call from an old mentor, Mr. Chen, the property manager who gave me my first leasing job back when I was 23 and clueless. You've been busy, he said with a chuckle. You could say that. He invited me to speak at a small landlord coalition. Nothing fancy, just local folks trying to figure out how to run properties without being slumlords. At first I hesitated. Public speaking, not really my thing. But then I thought about all the people I'd met over the years, tenants, contractors, even moms like Miss Delgado on the 4th floor who just wanted hot water and a quiet hallway. So I showed up. There were maybe 20 people in the room, a few with notebooks, a couple just there for the free snacks. I told them the real story, not the press version, the version with ramen dinners and broken boilers and months where I didn't know if I could pay taxes on time. And you know what? They listened. One guy came up after and said, "You made me realize I've been managing like my dad did in the 80s, cheap and cold. I want to change that." That hit harder than any headline, because that was the point. Not to be the hero, to break a ****up pattern. Meanwhile, back at Dane Tower, something beautiful started happening. People began smiling more. Kids rode scooters in the hallways again, okay. Sometimes too fast, but still, residents actually came to the community meetings. One night, Mrs. Conway, who's 72 and has arthritis, baked cookies for the whole floor and wrote "Thank you, Mr. Hail" on the tin. I nearly cried in the damn stairwell. And while all that was happening, Melissa, she started going quiet. Her crisis management rebrand clearly wasn't sticking. Too many receipts, too many angry tenants remembering her fake charity galas and non-existent community events. She tried to go wellness guru on Instagram, posted a photo meditating in front of a fountain. Someone in the comments wrote, "That fountain was broken until Jordan fixed it. Sit down." I couldn't help but laugh, but just when I thought the worst was behind me, I got served. A thick envelope, legal documents. Melissa was suing me for defamation and financial sabotage, claimed that the audit was doctored, said I misrepresented my intentions to the family and poisoned public perception. I handed the papers to my lawyer and said one thing: "Cool, let's open the books." She did not want that. A week later, her lawyer withdrew the case. Why? Because truth ain't slander. And I had enough documentation to wallpaper Dane Tower twice over, but that little stunt sparked something in me. I'd spent so long defending myself, proving I belonged, staying humble. F***ck that. It was time to build out loud. It was about time I stopped playing small. After Melissa's lawsuit flopped harder than one of Uncle Rick's passive income webinars, I realized something. They weren't dangerous anymore. They were desperate. And people in panic mode, they start making mistakes. So I stopped playing defense and started building something bigger. I called in a meeting with my two most trusted partners, Tasha, a contractor I'd worked with since my very first flip, and Marcus, a quiet ex-accountant who now managed finances for half my properties. We met up at this scrappy little coffee shop I love. No pretentious vibes, just $3 drip and sticky chairs. I want to expand, I said. Tasha blinked. You already control 20 buildings. Yeah, but that's just ownership. I want to build a model, something other developers can copy without screwing it up. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Like a framework. Exactly. Call it ethical housing development, but scalable, repeatable, community-led. They stared at me for a second, then Tasha grinned. You're serious. Dead serious. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it, but we're gonna need more data, like full transparency. You down for that? I smirked. Put every receipt on the damn internet if it helps. I'm not hiding and just like that, we got to work. While we laid the foundation, something wild happened. Tenants started telling their friends. Word got out that the guy who bought Dane Tower wasn't just fixing buildings, he was listening. I got letters from other tenants in nearby buildings. Would you consider buying ours? It's falling apart. We heard you don't kick seniors out. Is that real? Do you ever work in East Oakland? We need someone like you. Each one hit me like a gut punch. Like, how low was the bar for basic seeking decency? It made me angry, but it also gave me fuel. So I started mapping it all out. Buildings that could be saved. Partnerships with cities willing to play ball. Even land that could be developed without bulldozing people's lives. I wasn't trying to be the biggest landlord in the country. I wanted to be the kind of landlord who should have existed 20 years ago. And then, out of nowhere, I get this email. Subject line, request for coffee, mayor's office. At first, I thought it was spam. But nope, legit email. Someone from the mayor's advisory council wanted to meet. Apparently, they saw the audits, the reform, the tenant advocacy, and they wanted input on a new urban housing initiative. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my cereal. Me, the quiet cousin, the guy they called poor, now they wanted my input. Wild. The meeting was downtown, 2 blocks from Dane Tower. I walked there on purpose, didn't wear a suit, didn't bring a slideshow, just showed up in my hoodie and notebook. The woman I met, Karen, no, not that kind of Karen, was sharp. No BS, mid-50s, glasses, spoke like she ran 3 calendars in her head at once. She got right to it. We need someone who can tell us what not to do. I've got a long list, I said. We spent 90 minutes talking about broken permitting systems, useless inspections, and how landlords could actually be incentivized to keep rents fair without playing games. At the end, she said, would you ever consider joining the task force officially? And I said, sure, but I'm not going to kiss anyone's ass. She smiled. Good, we have too many of those already. Meanwhile, Melissa was imploding. Her attempt at a healing retreat business launched and died within a week. Turns out, people don't trust your spiritual alignment when you're fresh off an audit. Rick had started some kind of crypto consulting company. I think it was called Legacy Chain or some garbage. It lasted 3 months before a subreddit roasted it into the ground. Elaine moved to Arizona. Nobody missed her. The old guard was gone. And in their place, we started hosting monthly tenant roundtables. Food, feedback, real conversation. One of the residents, Jamal, said something that stuck with me. "You know what's different about you?" he asked. "What?" "You don't act like you're better than us." I blinked. Why would I? He smiled. "Most people with power forget where they came from. You act like you still live here." I didn't say anything because I do still live here. That apartment on the corner of Marion and 5th, still mine. Still has the same squeaky hinge on the bathroom door. Still smells like lemon cleaner and old brick. And I still love it, but don't get it twisted. I wasn't doing all this out of some saint complex. I was pissed. Still am. At a system that rewarded smoke and mirrors. At people like Melissa who only cared when the camera was rolling. At how many good families had to leave neighborhoods they helped build because nobody gave a *T about them once the rent checks cleared. So yeah, this wasn't a redemption tour. It was a cooking blueprint for how things should have been all along. Then, about 3 months after the audit fallout, I got a letter. Not an email. A literal envelope. Cream-colored, handwritten. Return address Blair Street, where my family's estate used to sit before it got foreclosed and auctioned off. Inside. A note from my mom. Simple. "You did good. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. I'm proud of you." I read it 10 times. Not because I needed her validation, but because for the first time in my life, she said it without conditions. Without, "but you should really," just proud. I tucked it in a drawer, didn't frame it, didn't post it. Just kept it. Quiet wins are still wins. Now, we're on the edge of something big. We got 3 new buildings under contract. City support on pilot programs. Even a documentary crew sniffing around not for drama, but to spotlight ethical landlords who give a damn. And me, still in my hoodie. Still walking the hallways at 9 p.m., checking light bulbs and elevator sounds, still showing up. But something's changed. I'm not invisible anymore. They see me now. They have to. Last month, I got invited to speak at a real estate summit. Nothing flashy, just a regional thing hosted at some swanky hotel downtown. The invite read, "We believe your development model is the future of ethical housing." I almost laughed. Because 10 years ago, I couldn't even get a bank to return my calls. Now they wanted me to talk about legacy. Funny how that works. I walked into the ballroom 20 minutes early. It was massive chandeliers, espresso bar in the corner, a bunch of people in shiny shoes milling around, pretending they weren't nervous. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there to tell the truth. When they handed me the mic, I didn't go into market trends or fancy ROI metrics. I talked about Miss Calderon, the tenant who used to cry every winter because her heater didn't work. I talked about Jamal, who finally got to put his daughter in a school near their apartment, and I said, straight up, if you don't care about the people inside your buildings, then you don't deserve to own *T. Half the room looked uncomfortable. Good. The other half nodded like they'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. That night, I went home to my place on Marion. Same creaky floors, same chipped countertop I keep forgetting to fix. I sat on the fire escape with a beer and watched the lights across the neighborhood flick on one by one. There was music playing from someone's open window, kids laughing, the smell of garlic from Miss Lynn's second-floor kitchen. This was the legacy I wanted, not the applause. Not the magazine features, just this. A neighborhood where people felt safe, seen, stable. But of course, peace never stays untouched forever. 3 days later, I got a call from a number I hadn't saved in years. Jackson. I stared at the screen for a solid minute before picking up. Hey, he sounded tired. Not fake tired, like real tired. Can we meet? I hesitated. What for? I want to talk. Not argue, not defend, just talk. I said okay. Because I believe in second chances. Not for everyone, not always. But sometimes, we met at the public library, his idea. He looked older, hair thinning, wrinkles around the eyes that didn't used to be there. He didn't try to charm his way through it. No stupid stories about Aspen or private jets. He just sat down and said, I was wrong about everything. And for the next half hour, he owned it. How he got caught up in the family image. How he used legacy as a shield for bad decisions. How he ignored the people he was supposed to help. It wasn't a performance, it was messy, honest. He looked at me and said, I want to start over. Not with money, with purpose. I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I asked, are you willing to work with tenants, clean stairwells, answer complaint calls at midnight? He nodded. Then show me, I said. Words don't mean *T without sweat. And just like that, Jackson joined our volunteer housing crew, first as a driver, then as a fixer. He's not great at drywall, but he shows up. That matters more. 2 weeks later, something surreal happened. We hosted a block party, our first one. Not a fundraiser, not a branding event. Just food, music, bounce houses for the kids, and space for people to be together. And in the middle of it, I looked around and saw something I didn't expect. My mom, talking to Blair. Smiling, helping a little girl refill her lemonade. Melissa wasn't there, but rumor had it she moved to upstate New York to start over. Opened a bookstore, a small one, no branding, no events, just books. And that's fine. Not every ending has to be fireworks. Some people just need quiet. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, Jamal found me again. You ever think we'd be here? He asked. Nope. He laughed. Well, you were right. About what? Best revenge really isn't revenge. It's this. He raised his paper cup and nodded at the crowd. It's watching them figure out they got it all wrong. Later that night, I sat alone in my office, lights off, just the hum of the city outside. I opened the drawer where I'd kept that rejection letter from Claudine all those years ago, pulled it out. Read it again. Your leadership instincts are not aligned with the expectations at Merit Group. I smiled. Then I fed it through the shredder. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need reminders of who doubted me. I was too busy building for the people who believed. A few weeks after the block party, I got another email from a high school senior. Said she was doing a project on socially responsible urban development. She wrote, I want to be like you. You made me believe it's possible. That one made me cry. Because damn, there it was. Proof that legacy isn't marble estates or last names etched into trust funds. It's making someone else feel like they can. So now, I'm still in my old apartment, still walking my neighborhoods, still helping tenants write grant applications. But we've also launched something new. Ridgeworks, a nonprofit development incubator. Helps people from underrepresented backgrounds learn the business construction, permits, tenant law, all of it. Not just to work for me, but to start their own thing, be the next wave. The next blueprint, sometimes I think back to that night. The dinner, when they laughed at my jeans and called me poor. When I smiled and passed the water and said nothing, that's silence. That was me loading the slingshot. Because sometimes, quiet isn't weakness, it's strategy. And now they sit in buildings I own, under roofs I repaired, sipping wine in neighborhoods I fought to preserve. And every time they brag about the new community feel or the renaissance of the district, I just smile. Because they'll never know how close they came to destroying it all, but I'll always know I saved it. Not out of ego, out of duty. Because real wealth is knowing that when you leave a place, it's better than when you found it. And if you ask me, that's the kind of revenge that actually matters. Story 2. I never expected a single message to flip my entire world upside down, but that's exactly what happened on the day I should have felt unstoppable. I was standing outside the event center at Northwestern University, graduation cap slightly crooked, gown fluttering in the Chicago wind, my computer science degree finally in hand after 4 brutal years. My classmates laughed, hugged their families, snapped selfies under banners. I stood off to the side, scanning my phone, waiting for something. A simple congrats maybe. Instead, I got this. No one cares about your graduation. Stop acting like a big shot. From my mother. In the family group chat. No context, no punctuation, just that. My cousin Jared dropped a laughing emoji underneath. My aunt posted a meme of a balloon deflating. My older sister, Bryn, replied, "He thinks he's better than us now. LOL. I stared at the screen like I'd been slapped. My hands started shaking, not with sadness, with clarity. This wasn't a one-time insult. This was who they were. I'm Micah Wynn, 23, and until that moment, I'd been my family's financial safety net since I was 18. While juggling college and night shifts at a tech repair shop, I sent $1,500 a month home to cover their rent and bills. They told me I owed them that I was lucky they didn't kick me out at 16 when I wanted to take extra coding classes, that since I was the one who got a scholarship, I should give back, that I was nothing without them, and I believed it. Until graduation day, my mom hadn't worked in years. She claimed chronic back pain, but could dance at family weddings just fine. My dad ran a small business that mostly consisted of flipping broken furniture from Craigslist, which meant he spent more time watching conspiracy videos than selling anything. Bryn, 29, lived at home with her 2 kids. She posted TikToks about breaking generational curses while using my bank account to buy ring lights and fast food. She once told her followers she was self-made. I paid her phone bill. Let that sink in. I didn't text back. I didn't argue. I opened my banking app, scrolled to the auto transfer labeled Win Family Rent, and hit cancel. My thumb hovered for a second, but then I remembered every time I skipped meals so they could eat out. Every night I stayed late fixing laptops to afford their groceries. Every time they called me the rich one like it was an insult. Click. Transfer canceled. Then I went into our streaming services and changed all the passwords. Petty maybe. Freeing absolutely. That night, I sat alone in my tiny studio apartment eating leftover dumplings and staring at the ceiling. I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt alive. I was done being their punching bag. They could joke all they wanted, but I had something they didn't: independence. And it was time I started living like it. I didn't go home after graduation. I didn't answer their calls. I needed space to breathe, to think, to figure out who I was without being someone else's crutch. The next morning, I boxed up the electric scooter I bought for Bryn last Christmas after she claimed she couldn't afford gas and scheduled a return. Then I walked to a corner cafe and started outlining my next move. A blog. That was the idea. A space to share everything they never wanted to hear: how toxic families use guilt as currency, how being born into obligation isn't the same as being born into love, how survival sometimes means walking away. I called it Code and Boundaries. Over the next week, I posted short essays, nothing viral, just quiet truth. If they mock your wins and demand your paycheck, it's not a family. It's a contract, and you didn't sign it. People found it. Strangers messaged me. One wrote, "I thought I was the only one. My parents took my student loan refund and bought a hot tub." Another, "You're the reason I finally canceled my sister's car insurance. Thank you." Their stories were raw, ugly, real. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. Then the messages from my family came flooding in. "Why isn't the rent paid? Micah, this isn't funny. Bryn's kids need groceries." "Don't make us look bad online." I ignored them. But one voicemail stuck with me. My mom's voice, sweet and venomous. "You'll regret this. Don't come crawling back when you realize you're nothing without us." It made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because for the first time, I saw the projection. They needed me. I didn't need them. I got a freelance contract the next week, $8,000 for redesigning a nonprofit's website, more than I'd ever made in a month. I didn't tell anyone. I just transferred it into a new savings account and felt the tension in my chest begin to fade. Then came the DM that changed everything. A producer from a podcast I loved. "Hey Micah, just read your blog. Would you be open to coming on and talking about family financial abuse?" I froze, then typed back, "Yes." And just like that, my story stopped being a secret. Going on that podcast felt like stepping into the sun for the first time in years. I sat across from the host, mic in front of me, headphones on, and for the first time, I said it out loud. My family didn't raise me, they drained me. There was a long silence. Then the host, Kira, leaned forward. "That takes guts, Micah." The episode aired 2 days later. It was titled "When Love is Conditional and Expensive." The internet exploded. DMs, comments, emails from strangers saying, "Me too." People called me brave. A few called me heartless, but the ones that hit hardest were the quiet ones. I didn't go to college because my mom said I'd owe her forever. My brother stole my identity. My family told me to get over it. You gave me language for a pain I didn't know how to name. I cried reading them, not because they were sad, but because I realized I wasn't crazy or alone. But my family didn't stay silent for long. The next morning, I woke up to a 3-paragraph Facebook post from my mom, tagging my aunts, cousins, and even her old boss. "My son is slandering us for internet points. We sacrificed everything for him. He's always been dramatic and ungrateful." She attached photos of me as a baby in a Halloween costume and one of me at prom with a fake smile plastered on. My cousin Jared commented, "What a clown." Bryn shared it to her Instagram story with the caption, "Narcissist energy. Y'all don't know the full story." I laughed, because I did have the full story and the receipts. The blog traffic tripled that day, so I published another post, $50,000 later. Still the ungrateful son. I didn't rage, I laid out the facts. $1,500 a month, every month since I was 18. Bryn's kids' school uniforms paid. My dad's overdue dental work paid. My mom's credit card debt, which mysteriously reset every December, paid. I included screenshots with names blurred but clear enough to understand the pattern. And then I ended it with this, "I'm not trying to destroy my family, I'm just done letting them destroy me." That hit a nerve. My mom texted me that night. "You're killing your sister. Her kids are suffering because of you." Bryn sent me a voice memo of her daughter crying in the background, saying they couldn't get McDonald's because Uncle Micah is being mean. They weaponized the kids. Classic. What they didn't know, I'd already set up a savings account in Bryn's daughter's name, one that only she could access when she turned 18. Quiet help, no strings. But I wasn't going to bankroll Bryn anymore. Her constant "I'm trying" texts while she posted Sephora hauls on TikTok didn't work on me now. 3 days later, my dad showed up at my apartment. I didn't even know he remembered my address. He stood in the hallway, wearing an old coat I once bought him, face tight with rehearsed rage. "You embarrassed your mother," he said, voice low. "You need to fix this." I stared at him. "She embarrassed herself." "You owe us everything," he snapped. "We raised you, fed you, let you go to college." I blinked slowly. "I earned college? You let me pay rent when I was still in high school." He didn't answer, just looked past me into the apartment like he was calculating the value of my furniture. "You always thought you were better," he said. And that's when I realized something. They never saw me as family, just as a failed investment that started asking questions. After he left, I locked the door and made another decision. I called a lawyer. I wanted legal protection from identity theft, from false claims, from whatever stunt they might try next, because part of me deep down still thought they might come for more. Turned out I was right. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my credit union. Someone had attempted to open a new credit card in my name. When the rep said the name Win was on the application, my stomach dropped. My dad's middle name is Anthony. I filed a police report. This wasn't just emotional abuse anymore. It was financial warfare. I documented everything: the fraudulent application, the screenshots, the voice memos. My lawyer helped me draft a cease and desist letter to my family politely but firmly stating that further contact would be treated as harassment. I felt guilt creep in, but I didn't let it take hold. Because guilt is a leash, and I wasn't wearing one anymore. A week later, I got a call from someone unexpected, my cousin Erica. We weren't close growing up, but now her voice was soft, nervous. I read everything she said, and I'm sorry. Turns out, my mom had tried to guilt Erica into commenting on my posts. Family unity, she called it. Instead, Erica apologized for laughing at me in the group chat that day. She said she understood now, that our whole family had a habit of biting the hand that fed them. "Are you okay?" she asked. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Because nobody had asked me that in a long time, I told her the truth. "I think I will be." I updated the blog again. Healing isn't quiet. It wasn't a takedown or an attack. It was raw. I talked about therapy, about guilt, about how weird it felt to finally choose me. The post went viral again. I was invited to speak at a virtual panel about financial boundaries in families. A therapist even reached out to ask if she could use my story in her class. It felt surreal. The kid who once cried in a library bathroom because he couldn't afford both textbooks and groceries, now helping others set boundaries. I started to believe I deserved peace. I didn't reply to my family's messages after that. Not when Bryn posted about deadbeat siblings. Not when my mom texted, "You'll regret this when we're gone." I muted the chat. I turned off the noise, and I breathed for what felt like the first time in years. I hadn't spoken to my family in almost a month. Not since the cease and desist letter, not since my cousin Erica called and actually apologized, not since I started sleeping without waking up in a cold sweat from phantom rent reminders, or Zane asking for just $200 more. My apartment was still small, still modest. But it was finally mine. One quiet Thursday, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single note on folded notebook paper. "You'll die alone." That was it. Black ink, shaky handwriting. Probably my father's, maybe my mother's. It didn't matter. I didn't even flinch. That kind of venom only hits if you still want their love. I filed it with the others' photos, documents, threats. My lawyer told me to keep everything just in case. There was a calmness in having a record. It reminded me I wasn't making this up. I wasn't overreacting. I was surviving something real. Work kept me grounded. I was still new at the tech firm, but thriving. My team liked me. I met deadlines. I didn't flinch when I made a mistake. That part surprised me. For years, failure felt like fuel for my family's fire. You think you're smart? Can't even fix the Wi-Fi. Acting like a big shot with that B-. Now mistakes meant growth, not guilt. And freedom was a strange kind of silence. I didn't have to report every win. I didn't have to downplay my success so someone else wouldn't call me arrogant. I was just living. Mara and I started hanging out more. At first, it was just support group meetings and long walks around the lake, then coffee, then dinner. She had a warmth I wasn't used to, like she didn't need anything from me, didn't expect anything except maybe honesty. One night, she asked, "What's the scariest thing about cutting them off?" I didn't even have to think. Believing I'll never be loved unconditionally again, her face softened. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You will. You just have to find the right people." I'd like to say I fully believed her, but that's not how healing works. It isn't linear. It doesn't obey timelines or logic. Sometimes you laugh at your mom's eviction texts, and sometimes you cry at a commercial about families eating dinner together. The wound's still there. You just stop picking at the scab. A week later, I got a text from my old neighbor in the building where my parents lived. I hadn't spoken to Mrs. Bell in years. Sweet lady. Always gave out butterscotch. "Micah, I don't want to be in the middle, but your mom was crying on the stoop this morning. Said she lost everything. I thought you should know." I stared at the message, heart weirdly still. I typed, "Thanks, Mrs. Bell, but I can't help her anymore. I hope she finds peace." I deleted the message before sending it. What would have been the point? I wasn't her rescuer anymore. My blog hit 100,000 reads. The traffic brought trolls. Of course. People who accused me of being spoiled, dramatic, or just mad he had to help his family. I tried to brush it off, but one comment lingered. My mom worked 3 jobs and I never once resented her. Maybe the problem is you. I almost replied, almost launched into the difference between helping a family that supports you versus being used like a vending machine. But I didn't. Because I realized something. They couldn't imagine my story because they weren't ready to. They hadn't lived it. So I wrote another post, "What they don't see, why it's okay to walk away from blood." In it, I described Christmases where I wrapped gifts I paid for, only to be told I wasn't generous enough. Birthdays forgotten, phone calls ignored unless they needed money. I wasn't bitter, I was honest. And honesty scared people more than rage ever could. Zane tried to paint me as some monster on social media. He made a TikTok series titled, "When Your Brother Thinks He's the Victim." It flopped. The comments were brutal. Why not just get a job? Dude. Your brother literally paid your bills. Sit down. He deleted the account a few days later, not before blocking me, though. Bryn texted me one night. "The kids don't understand why you hate us." I typed and deleted 20 replies. Finally, I just sent, "I don't hate you. I just stopped paying to be mistreated." She left me on read. Good. The support group became my new family in many ways. We shared wins like getting through the holidays without breaking down. We vented when the guilt flared back up, when a wedding invite had family only and we didn't know if that meant us anymore. One guy, Alan, said something that stuck with me. "I used to think family is forever meant you had to stay. Now I think it just means the impact lingers forever. But it doesn't mean you owe them your life." I wrote it down. It became the opening line of the keynote speech I gave 2 months later at a mental health conference. Yes, I gave a speech to 300 people about boundaries, about worth, about how the loudest freedom is the kind that doesn't need permission. Erica came to the conference. Afterward, she found me backstage and hugged me like we were kids again. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. I cried into her shoulder. Not because I missed my mom, or dad, or Bryn, or Zane. but because I finally believed I didn't need them. Mara was waiting for me outside. She handed me a coffee and smiled. "You ready for the next chapter?" I didn't even ask what she meant, because for the first time, 6 months after the Medium article, the world looked different. Not brighter, not darker, just clearer. My name wasn't trending anymore. My family wasn't in the headlines. The messages, the interviews, the podcast invites, they all slowed down. But my peace, that only grew louder. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Keller, quiet guy, listened more than he talked. During one session, I said, "I don't know if I hate them or just miss who I thought they were." He nodded slowly and replied, "Maybe you miss the version of you who still believed they loved you." It hit me like a gut punch. I wasn't mourning them, I was mourning the hope. Zane tried to reach out again, this time through an email, short, cold. "We all make mistakes. If you keep this up, you'll have no family left." I didn't respond. I didn't even forward it to my lawyer. There was no threat, no demand, just one last flicker of control. They were used to baiting me with guilt, but guilt only works if you still want in. I saved the email, added it to the digital folder, and then moved on with my day. Work promoted me. I was now a full developer, not just a junior. I led my first project, mentored a new intern, and presented a machine learning tool to a room full of suits without stuttering. For the first time in years, success didn't feel stolen. It felt earned, and no one could take it away. Mara and I moved in together. Not quickly, not impulsively, carefully. We talked about boundaries, about triggers, about what we both needed. She said, "I don't want to be your fixer." And I said, "I don't want to be your project." We laughed. And then we signed the lease. The apartment was bigger, brighter, ours. We hung a photo by the door, the Chicago skyline on a rainy day. It reminded us both that even the grayest things can be beautiful when seen through the right window. I thought about my mom once while watching a documentary about trauma. The narrator said, "People don't always mean to hurt you, but that doesn't make the wound smaller." I paused it, let the words sink in. I knew now my mother wasn't evil. Neither was my father, or even Zane. They were broken, entitled, addicted to power, comfort, and appearances. But I didn't need to hate them to keep them away. Sometimes the door stays locked not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. One day, a package arrived. No return label. Inside was my baby photo in a cracked frame and a note in Zane's handwriting. "You used to love us? What changed?" I stared at the picture. Me, maybe 3, laughing, eyes squinted shut. Innocent. It wasn't the photo that hurt. It was the fact that they sent it expecting it would work. That nostalgia could undo reality. I didn't reply. I didn't post about it. I just put the frame in a drawer and went back to living. The support group slowly shrank. People healed, moved, graduated emotionally. One by one, the chairs emptied, but we still messaged each other now and then. Birthdays, anniversaries, milestones. Alan got married. Priya reconnected with a sibling on her terms. Mara and I hosted a small Friendsgiving, 4 of us, mismatched plates, and too much sweet potato pie. We toasted to surviving, then to thriving. And then to doing it without guilt. My blog became a small business. Noted Solutions was now a blend of tech tutorials and personal essays. We launched a course, Boundary Building for Burned-Out Tech Kids. It did well. But my proudest moment wasn't the metrics. It was an email from a 16-year-old named Lucas. "Your story made me feel like maybe I'm not crazy. My parents call me selfish every time I say no, but now I know I'm not alone. Thank you." I cried in the stairwell at work, not because I was sad, but because if my pain helped someone else build a boundary earlier than I did, It was worth it. One afternoon, while walking home from a coding meetup, I passed my old coffee shop. The one where I worked 30-hour weeks, where I studied between shifts, where I used to send $1,800 a month without fail. I walked in. Same barista, different manager. I ordered my usual vanilla iced latte, light ice. He smiled. You used to come here a lot. I nodded. Yeah, I grew up here. It wasn't a lie. That place was my crucible. The barista handed me the drink and said, "On the house. I read your blog." I left the shop, tears behind my sunglasses, latte in hand, and whispered, "Thank you." To the universe, to the version of me that kept going, to the strangers who made me feel seen. I never got a real apology from my family, but I stopped needing one. Closure didn't come with their guilt. It came with my peace, with paying my own rent, not theirs. With falling asleep without checking Venmo, with no longer panicking at every phone call. At 24, I finally celebrated my graduation. Just Mara and me, a cake, a bottle of wine, my diploma on the table between us. She clinked her glass to mine. "To the big shot," she said, grinning. I laughed, really laughed, and replied, "To the kid who stopped paying to be ignored." Thank you for reading. If this story reminded you of your own, share it below. You're not alone, and you're not selfish for walking away from people who only love what you give, not who you are. Because sometimes, the best gift you can give yourself is freedom. Story 3. My name's Caleb Hart, 29 years old, and I'm the black sheep of the Hart family. That's not me being dramatic. That's just how it's always been. My mom, Sharon, once called my work a waste of potential at Thanksgiving while passing mashed potatoes across the table like she hadn't just thrown a dagger into my chest. I run a successful car restoration shop in Denver. Classic models, engine work, the whole deal. Greasy hands, loud tools, a real job. But in their world, unless you wear a white coat or have Dr. before your name, you don't count. So when I got a text on a random Thursday morning saying, "Don't come to your dad's retirement party. You'd embarrass us," I should have expected it. But I didn't. Because I'd been the one who planned the entire party. I stood in my garage with my hand frozen on a 1970 Chevelle carburetor, rereading that message like maybe, just maybe, it had come from the wrong number. But it was my mom, same number, same cold tone, and that was that. 6 months earlier, I'd poured nearly $11,500 into the event, booked a venue near the foothills, live jazz, catering from his favorite place, the one with the tiny lamb skewers he always bragged about. I even paid extra for a slideshow montage with soft jazz piano in the background. Why? Because I genuinely thought, maybe this time, they'd see me. Dad was retiring after 36 years as a renowned orthopedic surgeon, my older brother Julian, a neurologist, my sister Bree, pediatric oncologist, and me, the guy they barely introduced at family reunions. Still, I thought the party would be a way to show I wasn't some screw-up with a wrench. I was wrong. After that text, I didn't rage, I didn't cry. I sat on a cold workbench and stared at the wall for a long time. Then I opened an old spreadsheet labeled Heart Expenses. I had started it 2 years ago, more out of frustration than anything, line by line. Bree's tuition loan, $3,000. Julian's board prep course, $1,600. Dad's leased Audi maintenance, $950. Mom's emergency AC repair last summer, $2,100. Altogether, $22,400 over 4 years. I'd given and given, and they still treated me like a cautionary tale. That night, I canceled everything. The event planner's jaw dropped when I asked for all refunds and pulled the plug on the party. I had signed the contracts. It was all in my name. The venue 75% refund. Catering non-refundable deposit, but no balance due. Band fully refundable. Total savings recouped $7,400. I didn't send a message. No warning, just silence. Let them show up to an empty ballroom with nothing but regrets echoing off the walls. But I wasn't done. The next morning, I froze payroll at the Heart's new clinic, a wellness center they opened last year. Funny thing is, I built their payment processing system during its launch. All the permissions were still active. So I logged in, clicked suspend payroll, and waited. It took less than 2 hours before my mom called. I didn't answer. By the weekend, they were spiraling. My sister Bree texted, "What the hell? Caleb, you can't just sabotage us." I replied with one word, noted. No explanation, no drama, just the same cold tone they gave me when they told me I was an embarrassment. Then Julian chimed in. "Grow up. This is family." To which I responded, "Exactly, but it wasn't just the money. It was the way they erased me. Over the years, I started noticing things, like the time Julian tagged everyone but me in his hospital fundraiser post, or when Mom sent out Christmas cards last year with a family photo one I hadn't even been invited to take. Even at family dinners, they'd introduce Bree's husband like royalty and turn to me with, 'This is Caleb. He works with cars.' No one ever asked about my projects. Never once did they step foot in my shop. And now I wasn't welcome at a party I paid for. Nah, I was done. I started gathering receipts, pulling statements, tallying up every dollar, every favor, every sacrifice. There was that time I fronted the cost of Dad's medical journal printing when he gave that retirement speech early last year. Another $1,200 gone. Bree's wedding flowers? Yeah, $800 paid from my savings. And what about when Mom's laptop died before her keynote address at the local health symposium? I stayed up all night recovering her presentation and then bought her a new MacBook, $1,700. I'm not telling you this because I want pity. I'm telling you this because I finally stopped letting it slide. Being treated like background noise. Being the silent donor. Being the uninvited guest at my own contributions. I printed everything and organized it into a binder labeled Heart Investments, not gifts, investments. Because family's not about owing, but it sure as hell shouldn't be about being used. On Sunday night, I got a message from Dad. It simply read, "Let's not make this uglier than it already is." Funny how the man who never texted unless something was broken suddenly found words when his retirement party turned to ash. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and drafted a new document. The cost of being an afterthought. It started as a personal essay, a venting exercise. But the more I wrote, the more it felt like something else. A message, a call out, a warning to others. I wrote about the party, the money, the rejection, the years of being second class in my own home. I posted it online, a blog, Medium, Reddit, anywhere someone might find it and think, damn, I'm not alone. That night, I didn't sleep, not because I was angry. Because for the first time, I felt free, truly, beautifully free. I woke up to chaos. 12 missed calls, 6 voicemails, 4 emails, all from my family, and one text from my cousin Nina that simply said, "They're panicking." She wasn't exaggerating. The story I posted, the one about being shut out of my father's retirement party after funding it, had gained traction. Reddit had taken it up. Some popular blogger reshared it. Comments flooded in from strangers who saw themselves in my shoes. The shame, the silence, the expectation to give without ever being seen. One reply read, "You're not alone. Man, I've been my family's doormat for years." This made me cry, and it did something to me. Reading those messages, I realized I hadn't just told my story. I'd told ours. Meanwhile, my family was unraveling behind the scenes. Around noon, I got a furious call from Julian. "You had no right," he spat. "That article, are you trying to destroy us?" I didn't raise my voice. I just asked one question. Did you or did you not take $1,600 from me for your board prep and never pay it back? He hesitated. I was struggling at the time, and you made fun of my job while spending my money. Click. He hung up. That night, I drove to Nina's place. She greeted me with a hug and a thick yellow envelope. You need to see this, she said. Inside were screenshots, emails between Mom, Julian, and Bree. One email from Mom to Julian. Read. Caleb can cover the clinic costs. He always caves if we make it sound urgent. Another, just tell him it's for Bree's student loan. He won't question it. And the worst part? They'd used that $10,000 I sent for Bree's final semester to fund their private clinic. The same clinic where I set up their entire billing system. The same clinic they never invited me to tour once it launched. They built their empire on my back and cut me out of the photo. So I did what I do best, I fixed things. Systematically, I logged into the clinic's back-end system, still had admin access, still had every staff payroll file, client invoice history, tax records. I paused the auto deposit feature, just for a day, just enough to get their attention. Then I sent a message to the hospital board via anonymous tip. Please audit Heart Wellness for misappropriated funds and undisclosed family financing. I included Nina's screenshots and a copy of my PayPal receipt labeled Bree's Tuition Urgent. I didn't want to ruin them. I just wanted the truth out there. Later that week, Dad finally reached out. Son, he said, voice heavier than I'd ever heard it. We need to talk. I didn't know. About the clinic. About the party. I didn't know. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to think maybe, just maybe, he was the one person who'd been in the dark like me. But then I remembered a moment from last year. He was sitting across from me in the garage, watching me replace a timing belt. I mentioned the tuition I'd paid for Bree and the extra shifts I was pulling. He said, "She's lucky to have you," and went right back to checking his phone. He knew. He just didn't care. By now, the news had reached the clinic staff. One of the nurses DM'd me anonymously. We heard the rumors. Clinic funds came from your personal accounts. They never told us. Another wrote, they said they had investor backing. You're the investor. Investor. Now that was funny. I was the grease-stained, coverall-wearing embarrassment who couldn't get an invite to a dinner party, but behind the scenes, I was the investor. How's that for irony? Then the message from Bree came. Caleb, I'm sorry. I didn't know they lied to you. I thought the clinic money came from Dad. And maybe I'd believe her if not for the screenshot Nina showed me. Bree forwarding the PayPal confirmation email with the subject line, use this before he changes his mind. She knew. They all did. I started writing again. Another blog post, titled The Family Business I Accidentally Funded. I included redacted screenshots, payment records, no names, just raw, honest facts. It hit 20,000 views in 2 days. People called me brave. Some called me harsh, but no one called me a liar. The fallout came quickly. The hospital ethics board opened an internal review into my dad's board nomination. The clinic received a warning for failure to disclose funding sources. And the best part, a local news site ran a story titled Whistleblower Reveals Secret Backer Behind Private Medical Practice. They reached out for comment. I gave one sentence. When someone tells you you're not welcome, believe them and take your checkbook with you. One morning, I walked into the garage, coffee in hand, and saw a black SUV parked outside. Out came Dad. He looked older than I remembered. Not frail, just worn. I never asked them to do all that. He said, I thought they were being honest with you. You let them treat me like a stranger. I replied, even after I built your retirement party from scratch. I didn't know. I stepped closer. Then you didn't care enough to ask. He had no response. I'm not here to make peace. I said finally. I'm here to let you know you don't owe me anything, but you don't get to rewrite what happened either. He nodded, and then he left. A week passed, then another. The clinic froze new patient intake. Their accountant quit. A board seat went vacant. Their perfect little empire cracking at the edges. And me. I kept working. Old Mustangs, rusted Camaros, bent-up bumpers and busted timing chains. Each car, a story I could repair, unlike my family. But I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. I was finally free. 2 weeks after the fallout, my story wasn't just mine anymore. People kept reaching out. Some from anonymous burner emails, others from public profiles with their real names and faces. A few shared their own heartbreak. My sister did this exact thing to me. Took my student loan refund and bought a wedding dress. I paid for my dad's surgery, then found out my mom told everyone it was my brother's bonus that covered it. Each one stung like it was my own. Their pain echoed my silence. The family group chat, still no re-entry, no apology, no surprise. But now, I didn't want back in. Nina and I met again, this time at a lakeside diner where we used to get shakes as kids. She brought her laptop, along with an idea. You should keep going, she said. Right, build something out of this. What? Like a blog, I asked, sipping my milkshake. She shook her head. No, a whole platform. People want to talk about this stuff. You gave them permission. I stared at the lake while the idea sank in. What if this wasn't just my moment, but the start of something bigger? That night, I bought the domain unsilencedtruth.org. I didn't want to monetize rage or grief. I wanted to build a space for people to share their stories without shame. I worked late, the smell of engine oil still on my hands. My little apartment lit by the blue glow of my secondhand monitor. I posted my full timeline, the fake tuition, the party ban, the forged family duty narrative. I uploaded resources too: how to check if you're financially liable for someone else's debt, what red flags to spot in emergency money requests, and ways to reclaim digital access. Then I made an anonymous forum where others could vent, no names, no judgments. By morning, 200 people had signed up. By the end of the week, there were 3,000. One post stopped me cold. I left my abusive mom after she used my credit to get a car, then blamed me when she couldn't pay. Your story helped me file a fraud report. Thank you. Another said, my family never let me forget I wasn't a doctor like my brother. Turns out, I've been covering his mortgage for 2 years. I'm done now. I never thought my humiliation would give others hope, but it did. That gave me something I hadn't felt in years: purpose. In the middle of all this, Bree reached out. I want to talk, not as your sister, just as me. I hesitated, then agreed. We met in the parking lot behind the clinic. She looked different, tired, nervous. I didn't know how far it had gone. She said, I was scared to speak up. You were in every screenshot. Bree, I said, not cold, but not soft either. You forwarded the receipts. You helped them lie. I thought I had no choice. I thought you'd always be okay with it. That hit harder than anything else, that she'd counted on my silence. I didn't scream. I didn't storm off. I just said, I forgive you, but we're not family the way we were. She nodded. I get it. That was the last time we spoke in person. A week later, I heard she stepped down from the clinic partnership. Word was she took a teaching job in Vermont, something low profile. I wished her well. From a distance, as for Mom, she sent one more email, a PDF attachment, a typed apology. 4 pages long, signed, but not once did she write the words, I'm sorry. She used phrases like, I understand how you might have felt. We never intended harm, and let's put this behind us. Put what behind us? The time I canceled my own rent to cover her credit card. The way she banned me from a party I paid for. No, that wasn't something you bury in polite language. I didn't respond. Instead, I saved it in a folder called Unsent. A digital graveyard of all the words I wish they'd meant. Meanwhile, the forum kept growing. People shared horror stories, but also victories. One woman wrote, "I finally canceled the monthly transfer I was guilted into. It felt like cutting an invisible rope around my chest." Another posted, "I confronted my mom about the forged credit card. She denied it. Then I showed her the proof. She cried. I didn't. I added a new section to the site, Steps to Freedom. Not legal advice, just hard-won wisdom. Document everything. Save receipts. Don't confront them without backup. You are not responsible for their shame." I got a message from a producer at a podcast, a big one, The Invisible Anchor, a series about family roles and generational debt. They wanted to interview me, not for the drama, for the healing. So I said yes. We recorded in a quiet studio downtown. Just me, a mic, and the host's calm voice. "How did you first realize your family was using you?" I told her about the text, "Don't come. You'd embarrass us." About the jazz band I canceled, the clinic I funded, the spreadsheet I started at 2 a.m. in a greasy apartment. But what broke the spell, she asked. I said, reading my own story out loud. The episode dropped on a Wednesday. By Friday, the site traffic doubled. A young man in Australia wrote, "I heard your voice. I cried on my train ride to work. I'm not invisible anymore." A high school teacher in Florida wrote, "We played your episode in our psychology class. My students wrote reflection letters. You changed something." I sat in my garage that night, watching the sunset glint off a rusty bumper. For the first time, I didn't feel like the embarrassment. I felt like someone worth listening to. But the story wasn't over, because healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes it loops back. That weekend, I saw Dad at a gas station, of all places. He was pumping gas into an old Subaru, wearing a baseball cap low over his face. We locked eyes. He gave a small nod. I nodded back. That was it. No drama, no confrontation, just a quiet truce. Later that night, I typed a blog post titled, "Some Goodbyes Don't Need Words." It read, "You don't need an apology to move on. Sometimes, their silence is the clearest answer you'll ever get. Forgiveness is not permission. It's freedom." I hit publish and closed my laptop. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need anything from them anymore. Not money, not approval, not even closure. The podcast ripple turned into a wave. By the time spring rolled around, unsilenced, Truth had over 50,000 active users. I got emails from therapists, lawyers, social workers, even parents who said they recognized patterns in themselves. It was surreal. A few people even stopped me on the street. "You're the mechanic guy, right? The one who blew the whistle on his own family." I'd laugh, shrug, and say, "That's me, grease-stained whistleblower." I wasn't chasing attention, but the impact that part mattered. In May, I gave a talk at a local tech college, Rebuilding After Financial Betrayal. I called it. It wasn't just about numbers. It was about grief, identity, self-worth. I told them how the $10,000 I thought was for tuition actually seeded a private clinic, how my siblings weaponized my loyalty, how silence became my undoing and eventually my freedom. Afterward, a student approached me, eyes wet. "I haven't spoken to my mom in 3 years. She whispered, but hearing you made me think, maybe I can start healing without waiting for her." I handed her my card. No judgment, just presence. Meanwhile, the fallout kept trickling in. The hospital investigation went public. Local media picked up the fraud story, not a front-page scandal, but enough for the board to quietly revoke my dad's honorary titles. Elton lost his clinic privileges. Bree never returned to the city. and me. I stayed right where I was, in my little Chattanooga apartment with the stone porch and the hum of the Tennessee River, building something from the wreckage. Leia and I kept in touch. More than that, we built a new rhythm. Some nights, we'd sit in my garage with greasy hands and talk about everything. The moment she found the group chat screenshots, her fear of losing her job, the risk she took to send them to me. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said once, "but I couldn't watch them keep using you." "You saved me," I said, even when I didn't save myself. We never labeled it. It wasn't romantic or platonic or defined. It was just real. And sometimes, that's enough. Then one morning in June, I woke up to an email. Subject: book proposal. It was from an editor at a mid-sized publishing house. She'd followed the blog, listened to the podcast, and read my post, "Some Goodbyes Don't Need Words." She offered a deal, modest but honest, a memoir. Tentative title: The Family Bank Account. I stared at the screen, stunned, not because I wanted to be famous, but because someone wanted this story on paper, in print, in permanence. I signed, not for them, not for validation, but for every person like me who needed to read it and know you're not alone. As I wrote the manuscript, I revisited old texts and receipts. I added memories I hadn't shared before, like the time Mom borrowed my car for a weekend, only to pawn my stereo system while I was at work, or the time Dad said, "You know, a real man wouldn't need his hands dirty to prove himself." These memories didn't break me anymore. They clarified things. I used to think I was the weak link in my family. Turns out, I was the one holding them all together. Publication day arrived in fall. I didn't tell anyone in the family, not even Bree. Not because I was hiding it, because they didn't matter to this version of me anymore. The book launched quietly. No bestseller lists, no viral videos. But it found the right people. I got letters. I left my toxic parents. Your book helped. I confronted my sister after 20 years. I showed her your chapter, The Invisible Sun. She didn't apologize, but I walked away free. That was all I ever wanted. Not revenge. Just freedom. I moved again. Nothing dramatic. Just a new place across town, closer to the mechanic school where I now teach part-time. It's smaller, but it's mine. I filled the space with things that reflected me: tools, old records, a shelf of books. My diploma still sits in its envelope, unopened, not because I'm ashamed, because I no longer need anyone else to define my worth. One rainy afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a tiny box, my old class ring. I'd sold it years ago when money was tight, back when I was still sending $1.800 a month to cover family expenses. No note, just the ring. I smiled and placed it on my workbench. Maybe it was Leia. Maybe it was Bree. Maybe it didn't matter. It was a circle, a return, a sign that some things, once lost, still find their way back. The site still runs. Unsilenced, truth became more than a forum. It became a community. We do webinars now, host meetups, help people create financial escape plans. We don't preach. We don't judge. We just give people what I never had, a safe place to not be okay and to figure out how to get better. Sometimes, I wonder if my dad reads the blog, if Mom saw the book in a store, if Bree flipped through the pages and recognized herself in the dedication. For the ones who stayed silent too long, your voice still matters. But I don't need answers. I don't need apologies. I just need today, my porch, my tea, my laptop humming softly as I type this. So if you're reading and you feel like the forgotten one, the black sheep, the wallet, the shame, know this: you are not a mistake. You are not too late. You are not selfish for wanting peace. Walk away, if you must, Build a new family out of friends, mechanics, neighbors, support groups, or strangers on the internet, because love isn't owed. It's earned, and you deserve to be seen, not just used. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, even in a small way, leave a comment. Say where you're from. Say if you've ever walked away. Say if you're thinking about it. Your voice, like mine, deserves to be heard. Even if you say just one word, enough,